Might not have been the way the Tampa Bay Lightning wanted to end their regular season, but I still think they're going into the postseason with a lot of success in 24 and 25. Welcome to the final regular season episode of Locked On Lightning.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome all into another episode of Locked On Lightning. Josh Sperber here, giving you guys a big thank you for making Locked On Lightning your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if your team is the Tampa Bay Lightning, then this is the show for you. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. And before we talk about the rest of the game, I just want to give a big shout out to retiring Rangers broadcaster Sam Rosen. As a native New Yorker, Sam was one of the most prominent hockey voices of my childhood, and I certainly wish him the best in retirement. 40 years as a broadcaster for the New York Rangers, and in his final game, the Rangers beat the Lightning 4-0. I think there's something poetic about that, but as a Lightning fan, it's not exactly the score you want to see in the final game of the regular season. And some of it was definitely on the Lightning just being a bit conservative. I think, Lightning have their playoff seed locked up. Third, they finished the season third in the Eastern Conference, second overall in the Atlantic Division, and get home series advantage against everyone in the Eastern Conference aside from the Washington Capitals and the Toronto Maple Leafs. So a great season for Tampa. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in the next segment, but I think they played a bit conservative. Luckily this game really didn't count. The result didn't affect anything involving the postseason, but you still just want to end off on a better note. I mean, that first period was kind of a wash for both teams. Solid defense. Each goaltender made some really nice stops. And for those first two goals that the Rangers scored, I don't really think there's too much you can blame the Lightning on. I mean, yeah, a couple of careless passes, but for the most part, the shots that the Rangers got immediately off the bad passes were stopped by Jonas Johansson. And then, JT Miller ended up getting the puck. Him and Trocheck had a 2-on-1. Trocheck roofed the first goal. Second goal, ring around the net from Chris Kreider. And then the last two, just no one picked up Mika Zibanejad. And that was that. 4-0 Rangers. A good way to pay tribute to a legend at Madison Square Garden. But the Lightning's play on the road is really my biggest concern for the postseason. At home, they were fantastic. 29, 8-4. Not too many teams can say that they have single-digit losses on home ice this season. On the road, however, different story. 18, 19-4. And, just looking at the first round, you've seen the Lightning beat the Panthers a couple times on the road. But, it's still something that you just have to be concerned about for the Lightning in the postseason. But two great goals from New York to really just put some distance between the two teams. And all three games in this season series were decided by exactly 4 goals, which I think is just a fun coincidence. 6-2 Lightning in Amalie Arena, 5-1 Lightning in New York about a week ago, and then 4-0 New York in the season finale. Ryan McDonagh passed Duncan Keith for the sole possession of 7th all-time in block shots, and he has the best plus-minus rating in the NHL of plus 43. Nikita Kucherov officially clinched the Art Ross Trophy, and something we'll talk about in the final segment is Jake Guentzel playing in his 600th career game. But obviously, aside from the final score, I like the way that the Lightning organized the time on ice. I mean, you look at the guys that played the fewest amount of time Cirelli, Kucherov, Point, Hagel. I mean, all of the, the top guys, the players on the top lines just didn't play as much. Gage Gonzalez and Connor Geeky both set career highs in terms of their time on ice and season highs across the board for guys like Yanni Gourde, Zemgus Girgensons, Cam Atkinson in terms of time on ice as well. So the Lightning did a good job switching up their lines and getting more of the bottom six guys some more time, giving a little bit more rest to some of the top six guys in terms of the forwards. And another 11-7 game has me thinking that is going to be the more common formation in the postseason, though it would be an incredible chess move for John Cooper to go back to 12-6 for the majority of the playoffs after finishing almost the entire month of April going 11-7. I think there might have been one game in the last month of the season where the Lightning went their conventional 12-6 in terms of lines, but I think it's a really smart decision just to keep Florida guessing. I mean, if you don't know how the other team is going to line up, it's going to be hard to defend against, even with an extra defender that the Lightning have been employing. So I like the kind of chess moves that John Cooper's playing because, frankly, I'm looking at the way the Lightning are lining up, and unless they go 11-7 again, which you don't see all that often in the postseason, I'm thinking – who knows how the Lightning are going to line up in the playoffs against Florida. I think that's exactly the point for John Cooper. I mean, he's a smart coach. I think he is getting absolutely shafted in the Coach of the Year award polls. I only saw him in the receiving votes section, but that's a whole different argument. Regardless, though, I think that he did it, the Lightning did what they needed to do in this game in terms of just playing the players and not getting anyone hurt. No one left the game injured. Kucherov, I think, got hit in the face early on, and then his minutes got calmed down. But it's difficult to rest guys in hockey because this is the, in hockey, most guys or most teams carry just the right amount of players for the line, and the Lightning would have to make wholesale changes if they're trying to get, some guys a rest. It's not like baseball where you have almost two lineups of players on your team. Basketball, you have up to 3 full lineups on your entire roster, usually 12 dressed for a game. Football, that's obviously one of the easiest sports to get injured. So you have like 100 players, something like that on a roster. But hockey, it's not that easy. And I think the Lightning did a good job of keeping their guys out there, getting them some reps in the last game of the season, but not pushing too hard, and no one got hurt. So the Lightning, for the most part, at least from the players that came into this game, obviously Oliver Bjorkstrand being hurt is still an issue, and Lightning definitely have a couple more guys that could use some rest before Tuesday. But I think the Lightning did, at least in that standpoint, well enough to just rest their guys, not overplay some of the top players, and just, keep everything simple against New York. Obviously, it's not the result you want in the last game of the season, but it's building blocks. It's something that the Lightning can say, hey, we got this one out of our system. Because a game like this, in a meaningless end of the regular season game, at this point, the entire Eastern Conference plate had been decided. The result meant nothing but pride for the Rangers and a nice send-off for a legendary voice of the NHL. But, in terms of the standings, this game meant nothing. And the Lightning kind of treated it like that. But you'd rather put up a dud like this in the last game of the regular season than in any game in the playoffs, because I don't want to say the Lightning have been inconsistent this year, but like any team in an 82-game season, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. Some games are going to be great. Some games you're not going to look so great. And this was certainly not one of the best games the Lightning have had this season. I don't think it was the worst game the Lightning had this season, but they need to be better than this in the playoffs. But again, you'd rather get a shutout loss in a regular season game that has no effect on the standings, no effect on anything, and finish the season on a more sour note than put up a game like that in the postseason. So hopefully the Lightning got that out of their system and they're ready to turn things around and get back to the high-powered offense that the Lightning have had in the playoffs against Florida that start on Tuesday. But we still have to talk about how this regular season went because I think it was a resounding success. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire's TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With Wi-Fi 6/6E and auto low latency mode advanced technology, Fire TV Stick 4K delivers smoother, more responsive gameplay with lightning fast speeds you need to stay competitive. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed TV services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and a whole lot more. Play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. Already have a console? A Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and way easier to travel with, allowing you to take your or your kids' games wherever you plug in. And I'm a guy who travels with his Xbox a lot, and it takes up most of my suitcase. So then I got a Fire TV Stick 4K, and I'm able to pack a lot more things that I actually need when I go on vacation. So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube, 3rd Gen. Learn more at Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On. I think that no matter what happens in the postseason, this Lightning season needs to be viewed as a resounding success. You know, we've talked about it so much on this show. In the offseason, the Lightning lose a franchise legend, one of the best players to ever suit up for Tampa Bay. And, you know, they were doubted by just about everyone. I'll even admit, even I thought that the Lightning would maybe be able to slide into a wild card spot based on some of the rest of the division, but I didn't think that they'd be a 100-plus point team. I definitely didn't think that they'd have home ice advantage for any round of the playoffs, let alone the majority of the postseason. Only 3 teams finished with better records in the Eastern Conference than the Tampa Bay Lightning. The President's Trophy winning, or Eastern Conference President's Trophy winning, Washington Capitals, second best team in the entire league in terms of points scored. Winnipeg Jets obviously won the President's Trophy. Congrats to them. But the Capitals with 111 points, the Maple Leafs with 108 points, and then the Lightning with 102. One of 3 Eastern Conference teams with 100 points or more. Add in the 6 from the Western Conference, and that's less than half the league. The Lightning are one of those elite teams in the NHL at the end of this regular season. There's no two ways about it. Could they have played better on the road? Absolutely. But calling the Lightning anything but elite and one of the best teams in the league is just incorrect. They're a top 10 team in the NHL at the end of the regular season, period, end of story. They're on the top half of their conference. They're on the top, 10 of the entire league. And, I mean, they defied a whole lot of expectations with their season. I mean, Nikita Kucherov, I said at the beginning of the year, a 100-point season and a playoff run for the Tampa Bay Lightning gives Nikita Kucherov the Hart Trophy. He's got to win it. Second straight Art Ross for Cooch, 3rd overall. And I truly believe that it's going to be his second Hart Trophy this season. 2018, 2019 was the last time Nikita Kucherov won both the Hart and the Art Ross trophies, and I think he's going to do it again. That's huge. Ryan McDonagh leads the league in plus minus in his first year back with Tampa Bay. 35 years old, still suiting up as one of the absolute best defenders in the history of the NHL. Moving all the way up into the top 7 in terms of blocked shots, past a number of notable Hall of Famers and defensemen in NHL history. I mean, he had a spectacular year. We're going to talk more about Jake Guentzel in the next segment, but man, did he have almost as good of a possible season as he could have had in his first year with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Again, we're going to go into more detail in the next segment, but Guentzel finishes 4th on the Lightning in terms of points scored and 2nd in terms of goals scored. He had a great season in his first year with the club. Andrei Vasilevskiy might not win the Vezina. Connor Hellebuyck is the league leader in most goalie stats, and whatever stats he doesn't lead, it's Vasilevskiy. But Hellebuyck's on the President's Trophy winning team. My guess is that he'll take the Vezina, but Andrei Vasilevskiy better to give him a darn good run for his money because, in my opinion, he's a Vezina-worthy goalie and still the best in the league. I mean, 2 hills I'll die on is that the Lightning have the best offensive player in the league in Nikita Kucherov and the best goalie in the league in Andrei Vasilevskiy. I've said that more times than I can even think. That doesn't change, and I think that was cemented with this season. You know, both of those guys might have had more pressure than anyone on the Lightning squad, except for possibly Victor Hedman and possibly Jake Guentzel, because when a team is going through a transitional period like the Tampa Bay Lightning are, the best players, you know, some of the team leaders, players that have been fighting to gain recognition among the top in the NHL and are relatively underappreciated, like Kucherov and Vasilevskiy are, it's going to be on them. You know, the season lives and dies with those kind of players. And Vasilevskiy and Kucherov both put up some of their best seasons and were absolutely instrumental in the Tampa Bay Lightning getting to the position that they're in. You know, those are 2 players that I think the Lightning would be absolutely sunk without. I mean, 121 points from Nikita Kucherov, and that's not even his career high. Again, just shows the just incredible offensive talent that he has. And Vasilevskiy might not have had his best season ever. He had a pretty slow start to the year, but, you know, once the season got rolling, he was a wall in net. And 2 players that the Lightning just couldn't do without, and they'll need some big performances from them in the postseason. And of course, you know, a new captain. And I think I'm not going to harp on the new captain thing as much because, you know, the Lightning essentially had 2 captains for the past few years. Hedman has always been a strong leader and prominent figure in the Lightning locker room, well respected across the game. He'll end up in Toronto in a Hockey Hall of Fame by the time he hangs it up. Truly one of the best defensemen that has ever taken to NHL ice. But I don't think that his stepping into the captain role so seamlessly is a surprise to anyone. I mean, how many times do you have a unanimous captain voted to an NHL team? It doesn't happen all that often, and it did happen with Victor Hedman. No brainer, and he proved that each and every night on the ice, not missing that much ice time either. I mean, you know, the Lightning had, you know, a couple of 30-year-olds, mid-30-year-olds, Hedman and McDonagh, play almost the entire game. McDonagh missed the finale. McDonagh missed just 1 game. No, McDonagh didn't miss a game. My stats didn't update. Hedman missed 3. And those are the 2 oldest players on Tampa Bay. Unbelievable longevity and fantastic seasons from both of them. But, you know, obviously, a lot of people look at the playoffs as a determining factor in season success. I agree with that. And I think that is definitely a measuring stick that or on how success should be measured for just about any team. But even if the Lightning crash out in the first round against the Panthers, I don't think that's going to happen. But hypothetically, if that does happen, you still have to view the season as a success because no one expected the Lightning to be here. And I think a lot of teams are going to think twice about doubting Tampa Bay in the seasons to come. I mean, this is just a team that has incredible coaching. John Cooper is one of the best coaches in the league and has been one of the best coaches in the decade plus that he has been with the Tampa Bay Lightning. And it's a well-coached team. There's a lot of really talented players, and I'm really excited to see what they can do in the postseason. But again, 2024, 2025 was a wildly successful season for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of that was due to the best offseason acquisition of 2024, Jake Guentzel, who played in his 600th career game in the season finale against the New York Rangers. And it might not have been the best game for him or the Tampa Bay Lightning, but Jake Guentzel has certainly begun to pave a road to the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto with a strong first 600 career NHL games. The Stanley Cup playoffs are here, and if you've never been to an NHL playoff game, it is unlike anything else. The intensity, the speed, the energy in the building, it's next level. And thanks to Game Time, getting in the door is easier and more affordable than ever. Game Time is the fastest way to grab playoff tickets, even for those must-see matchups. Prices actually drop as the puck drop gets closer, and with last-minute deals, you can save up to 60%. Save up to 60% buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. The all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with zero surprise fees at checkout. The Game Time app even shows you panoramic seat views, which lets you know exactly what you're getting before you buy. And with Game Time ticket coverage, I know I'm protected, whether it's cancellation protection, job loss assurance, or their 24-hour return guarantee. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, that is code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And for one last time in the regular season, we're going to talk about Jake Guentzel. Continued assertion that I have made is that Guentzel was the best offseason acquisition. And I haven't looked at these particular stats in a bit, but I don't think there was anyone who changed teams in the offseason that scored more points than Jake Guentzel did. 41 goals, second on the Lightning. 39 assists as well for Jake Guentzel, which was fifth on the Lightning, and his 80 points were fourth on the Lightning behind Nikita Kucherov, Brandon Hagel, and Braden Point. And I think Guentzel was slept on a bit in his last couple of years. I mean, you look at his pedigree. He had an 80-point season. He was a part of a Stanley Cup run for the Pittsburgh Penguins in his first year. And, that was his rookie season. Played 40 games in the regular season, 16 goals and 17 assists. Not bad for a rookie. And then he played, I think, every game in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Tied the playoff record for points by a rookie. Scored 5 game-winning goals and led all postseason scorers with 13 in 2017. Third 40-goal season in his first year with the Tampa Bay Lightning. And this was his third team in the past year. Started 2023 with the Carolina Hurricanes, started with the Penguins, a deadline deal to the Carolina Hurricanes, was instrumental during their playoff run, and then they shipped him to the Lightning for a third-round pick. How Julian Brisebois convinced the Carolina Hurricanes to part with Jake Guentzel for just a third-round pick is beyond me. masterful move by Breezeball right on the heels of losing Stamkos, and it maybe saved the entire season. Was Guentzel the absolute best player on the Tampa Bay Lightning this season? Maybe not. Could the Lightning have reached this level of success without him? I don't think so. Given the makeup of the team after Stamkos left, I don't think that the Lightning would be in the position they're in right now without Guentzel's addition. 2 assists in his first game with the Tampa Bay Lightning, and it just barely saw him off the scoreboard. It just seemed like he was a key part of the Lightning offense in every single juncture of the season. And I think he is going to be crucial in the postseason. And again, the Lightning certainly would not be in the position they're in without the help of Jake Guentzel. I think he was the best offseason move of the season, and I don't think it's close. I really don't. I think, time might, depending on Connor Geeky's progression, time might prove the Mikhail Sergachev trade to be an even bigger steal. The Lightning going a couple years younger on defense and then adding a 20-year-old prospect who turns into a solid physical two-way forward whose scoring talent seemed to improve at the end of the NHL. And I'm really excited to see him play in the playoffs. But I think Jake Guentzel really stepped up as a leader and is one of the better offensive players in the NHL over the course of this season. And the Lightning wouldn't be here without it, plain and simple. I think 600 career games is certainly an important milestone. And, it's clear that he is not only one of the best players in the NHL right now, but also one of the best American players in the United States. I mean, he was on the Four Nations roster and in the top 5 in goals scored through that entire tournament. So I think it's pretty safe to say after this year that Jake Guentzel has solidified himself as one of the best players in the world. Maybe not top 10, maybe not even top 20, but he is certainly in the top tier of hockey players on the planet. He was an absolute star for the U.S. and Four Nations and was indispensable to this Tampa Bay Lightning team throughout the entire regular season. And again, the Lightning might not have made the playoffs without Jake Guentzel. I think that might be a little bit of a stretch to say, but they certainly wouldn't have home ice without Guentzel. You look at that, you look at how the Atlantic Division shapes up. 5 playoff teams of the 8 in the Eastern Conference came from the Atlantic. All of them had over 90 points. And the Canadians might not have been able to catch them without Guentzel, but the Panthers and Senators are both within 5 points of the Lightning. You take Guentzel out of the equation for Tampa Bay, Ottawa and Florida, I think, make up those 5 points for Florida easily. So Guentzel, indispensable for the Tampa Bay Lightning over the course of this season. Certainly has his work cut out for him to get to the Hockey Hall of Fame, but I think it's an absolute possibility. And I think that a really solid postseason run from him could really begin to solidify his legacy as one of the game's greats. And that is a wrap on the regular season for Locked On Lightning. I'm going to have to join forces with Armando Velez of Locked On Panthers throughout the postseason. So stay tuned for some crossover episodes on that. But until then, I'm Josh Sperber, and thank you for making Locked On Lightning your first listen throughout the regular season. For your second listen today, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night, until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And wherever you listen to your podcast, make sure to give us a like, a subscribe, and a follow. We really appreciate your guys' support as we do this show for you, the fans. So fans, thank you again for tuning in to Locked On Lightning all season long, and I'll see you in the playoffs.